This is General Election 2019, and welcome to a special series of in-depth interview with Christian representatives from all the major political parties who are standing in this election. And this election will determine who will form our next government as we all go to the polls on Thursday, the 12th of December. And in this programme, I'm interviewing Tim Vince, who is representing the Brexit Party. Tim, welcome to this special programme.
Very much. Simon, I'd just make a comment on the intro. It's very profound because instead of saying the United Kingdom, it says Britain. And one of the key problems with Boris's Brexit deal is that it puts a border between Northern Ireland and Great Britain. And so I don't know whether that was intentional, but it is the United Kingdom general election.
Absolutely. So, Tim, you are extremely well known amongst our viewers. I even say that you are loved by our viewers watching this programme.
You say you couldn't say.
I am saying.
Nice.
So, can you share with us, for anyone who hasn't seen you on this channel before or seen you when the programme gets aired to YouTube, who is watching you for the first time, how you came to faith in the Lord Jesus Christ and how did politics become something you became interested in?
Okay, so I attended a number of schools and I was quite shy. They were state schools. I did go to one private prep school in Kew College, and then Greycourt Comprehensive, Heathfield Comprehensive. And I was very shy about talking. I had brothers and sisters, siblings who were strong in their faith and I wasn't. And I got involved with the wrong crowd and was going in the wrong direction. So Dad hoiked me out and put me in a Christian school in North Wales, a boarding school, and I had an opportunity for the fourth or fifth time to commit my life to the Lord, and it was in September 1979, and I just prayed that I would honour the Lord in my life and honour my father and mother, and that changed everything because I started telling people. For the first time in my life, I was bold. I was mocked in biology classes for believing in creation. That strengthened me. I was mocked for all sorts of different Christian beliefs. And I actually don't mind being mocked because it does drive you back to the scriptures to say, well, what is the most important thing I have to do in my life during this short chapter that we have? And I haven't looked back, and I have actually held consistent beliefs, simple, traditional Christian beliefs right through my adult life.
So where does your interest in politics come from?
It's a love-hate. We're all involved in politics, whether we like it or not. Right. You know, render unto Caesar what belongs to Caesar. Jesus was involved in politics, but not primarily. We're primarily here because we're accountable to what God requires of us. To do good, you know, walk humbly, do justice, but also in terms of our witness. And the most important thing is to warn people of the judgment to come, and that their life, everything they say and do in this life, they will be held to account. And if they haven't actually acknowledged the Lord Jesus, then they won't have that as a defence in terms of what the Lord has done for us. So how did I get involved with the Brexit Party? I happened to meet a member of the London Assembly who was, I won't name him, but saying how UKIP was struggling, and that actually the Brexit Party, it was right at the beginning of this year, and I just signed up as a supporter. And before I knew it, I was being invited to an interview as a candidate. And as I'm speaking to you now, as I've spoken on Rev TV for umpteen years, I just said it at my interview, what I believed. And to the credit of the Brexit Party, they signed me on. And that, I don't believe, would happen with any other party. You know, sensitive subjects. I said, look, we're living in a multicultural society. This is my position. And there are thousands and thousands of other Christians out there who believe it. And are there any skeletons in the cupboard? No, they're all out in the open. I haven't hidden any of them. And of course, on the moral issues, they're very important, especially the education of children. And I said it, and they accepted me, and I became a candidate.
So you were a candidate for South Tennant. Thanet, sorry. Until your leader, Nigel Farage, decided to pull out the Brexit candidates who were competing against Conservative-held seats in support of Brexit. So can you describe your first few weeks as campaigning on behalf of the Brexit Party? Because you made quite a media storm.
Yeah, well, what happened was, first thing you do, it's an internet world, you produce a good website, Thanetbrexitparty.org, and the headquarters saw that it done a good job on that, and before I knew it, I was being invited to a BBC Inside Out, a documentary. It took, I don't know, weeks of 4 days of interviewing, following me, going around the constituency. So I had quite a high profile quite quickly. I don't know how many people watched the BBC, but what I discovered from that pre-record was most of my best arguments, meeting people on the streets or ladies at lunch in a hotel, weren't included, and they apologised to me because they said, well, the lady who was pro-Remain wasn't quite as advanced as you in her argument, so we had to dumb the whole thing down. And then they invited me to do a live interview, and that was quite different.
Tim, we are now living in increasingly difficult times, particularly for Bible-believing Christians to be in the front line of British politics. We're seeing a purge from the major political parties of Christians who hold biblical beliefs, such as the sanctity of marriage and what have you. And we're also seeing that Christians are being marginalised by mainstream society. What are your thoughts on this issue, and how is the Brexit Party going to address these issues of Christian freedom?
Yeah, not just marginalised, I think crushed. There is a campaign to crush Christian influence in schools. They have made it illegal for creation to be taught. They are imposing a quite radical LGBT agenda. The Department for Education, so this isn't a party political issue, this is the Conservatives in power, the so-called social conservatives have abandoned their traditional heartlands and they're going for this sort of middle liberal ground. And the end effect is that there is no place for confessing Christians in the public square unless they're prepared to really take a public flogging, which I had, in this interview I've mentioned. And I'm afraid anyone who's in the public sector, they have to sign up to things that are questionable. So the Equality Act 20, whatever it was, I've forgotten, 10, is a problem for confessing Christians because it says that, it does say that faith is protected, but it says that certain lifestyles, which are prescribed in the scriptures, New Testament and Old, are not only that folks can practice however they want to. I mean, the Bible says people can choose to be whatever they want to, but there are consequences. But what is a problem for Christians is that they are saying, you must endorse it. You must confess it yourself. You must sign the equality policy of a school or a hospital or the public sector equality duty. Even Sajid Javid tried to bring in an oath to endorse these so-called modern values. Now, they are opposed to the scriptural position, and we are getting to a position where you can't get into public office without bowing the knee, and that's why I use the term that they are being crushed. The Christian witness is being crushed in the public sector.
What is your party's approach to Bible-believing Christians, and what do you think the Brexit Party can do to ensure that Christians, whether they're working in the health service, whether they're working in education, are free to be a Christian without facing persecution or even being dismissed for their job because they're praying with a patient, or someone has to ask them about their faith, they share their faith, and then suddenly they lose their job?
Okay, so there's a few layers. You've mentioned education, health. I think in the civil service, this is published in the contract of Nigel Farage, that civil servants will have to declare their political leanings. And that is very important because there's a pretense that they are impartial, loyal servants. It's like the BBC, there's a pretense we're impartial reporters. They're not. They've got an angle. And the reality is we know everyone has an angle, but to pretend that you don't, and you're the only ones who are part of modern Britain and, tolerant of all, when you're explicitly not tolerant. I'll give you an example. In the Department for Education, they have a rainbow flag. By the way, it's not the 7 colours, it's 6 colours of the rainbow, like a banner going down from the 4th floor to the ground floor in the atrium. They have key members, civil servants, who say, I am an LGBT champion on their email signature, larger than the DFE logo. It's quite open that is like the religion that they adhere to. Well, they're very welcome to that, but it shouldn't be at the expense of people who hold to another faith. So I think the Brexit Party is very diverse. There are people in the party who would not agree at all with what I'm saying here, and yet they allow me to be part of the Brexit Party as support base, and others. And they have candidates, who personally stand for different things. But there is a unified position that we need to be free, a free, independent, sovereign state, and we can all sign up to that. It's like I don't agree with the Muslim faith, and creed, according to the Quran and the Hadith and the like. But when there are Muslim parents protesting outside school gates in Birmingham over a curriculum which is basically crushing traditional moral values, I'm with them. Even though, as I say, I may not be, and I have debated openly with Muslims in their own debating chambers about the faith, the Christian, Muslim, positions and Jewish positions. So the point is, the Brexit Party is the most diverse party in the country, no question about it. It used to be national. If we have a hung parliament, we may have another election before we know it, and then we'll see the Brexit Party come back and field candidates.
Now, the Brexit Party is obviously a very new party. It did extremely well in the recent European parliamentary elections back in June, I think becoming the 2nd largest party across the whole European Union. But when it comes...
Largest number of candidates, largest number of members of European Parliament.
MEPs, yeah.
MEPs, sorry. And also, their vote was larger than the Conservative and the Labour Party vote for the European elections.
Which is extraordinary, but this is different. This is a general election, and people are voting on issues beyond Brexit, issues and actually preparing a vote of how they vote or who they think would best govern the country. And is not the Brexit Party just a one-party issue, which is Brexit? And how can you convince our viewers that a vote for the Brexit Party is not a waste of vote, that could allow a coalition government made up of Labour or the Liberal Democrats, and then Brexit would be forward. So in terms of voting, why should our viewers vote the Brexit Party?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and we need wisdom. Every voter, every Christian voter needs wisdom to pray what is the right thing to do in any given constituency. But, Nigel Farage has never pretended, like Joe Swinson, that he's going to be Prime Minister. It's ridiculous. So the policies are common sense policies. They obviously, it is an insurgent party, so they're going to influence policies of the other main parties, especially if there's a large vote for the Brexit Party. Now, in specific constituencies, let's say Labour Leave, there are 5 million Labour Leave voters out there in the North and the Midlands. The Labour voters won't vote for Conservative. So they may vote for a few Conservatives, but the wisest response of Boris, actually, if he really wanted to achieve Brexit, would have been to tone back Conservative candidates in constituencies where Tories have never been returned or haven't been returned for 100 years. And so it's certainly not a waste of vote. It depends what constituency you're in. And then, how can any Christian, after over a millennia of Christian anti-Semitism, vote for an overt anti-Semitic party, which is the Labour Party as it currently stands. And I have to say, it's not the traditional Labour Party. The Labour movement has been very supportive of Israel and the Jewish people through the generations, but there's a virulent strain at the moment which is hounding candidates and party members out if they are supportive of Israel and the Jewish people. And it does go together, by the way. I mean, Israel is the Jewish state. And Corbyn, I wrote a newspaper called Israel and Christians Today 20 years ago, and I remember, and I've still got the photos of him at rallies, you know, alongside some of the most nasty criminals who have murdered Israelis, you know, and he paid homage to them, you know, laying wreaths or being present when wreaths were laid at the graves of terrorists. So Corbyn, how he's got through, for me, is unbelievable. In fact, I do think it's spiritual. I think the hatred of the Jews is spiritual. I think even the fact of how did Hitler get into power? Corbyn isn't that far away from power. So if people want to take this seriously, it's not just Brexit. There is a spiritual dimension. And I know I've been mocked for talking about it, but 50 years ago, most politicians would acknowledge the spiritual dimension to Britain. So it's not that crazy. It just happens to be crazy in this progressive liberal world that we live in.
I'm talking about the issue of Jew hatred, which has become a major theme of this year's general election. We've had the intervention by the Chief Rabbi Ephraim Marvis, which is unprecedented on behalf of the Jewish community, to speak on behalf of the Jewish community, who are very, very scared during this election. What can your party do to reassure the Jewish community? Because this is not something that Nigel Farage has spoken about very much.
I think it's very difficult to reassure them, frankly. It is absolutely unprecedented. That is not a small thing for the chief rabbi to come out publicly. They're smart people. He knows that that it is very, very serious for him to write an article publicly during a general election campaign. You'd have to go back to the Dreyfus trial or you know, things of epic proportions in history to see that a whole communities. The Jews were admitted back into this country under Oliver Cromwell, you know, over 400 years ago. We're getting to a point where they might leave. And by the way, it's not just because of Corbyn. I mentioned earlier about the schoolgate protests. It's not just the Muslims who are concerned about their future livelihood and education. It's been Jewish education for 4,000 years. And the secular humanists are pontificating that now it has to be stopped and it's repressive towards children. And Jewish communities know that they cannot survive without their biblical heritage of education. So it is pretty serious stuff. And I must say, I'm concerned that the Labour Party, not only do they not see it, they resent the fact that the chief rabbi has spoken out, and there are nasty people there who want to bring retribution. And so we're living in very dangerous times.
When it comes to the Brexit Party has produced what your party calls the contract for the people, rather than producing election manifesto. Can you give us the reasoning and the thinking behind this?
Yeah. So, you know, manifestos are observed in the breach, if that's the way. You know, they're seen more in the breach than the observance. The manifestos of the main parties are very carefully cooked up to hoodwink the electorate largely. I've said it before, but on same-sex marriage, that was never mentioned in the 2010 manifestos of any party, and yet they whacked it through, irrespective of the electorate. So the main parties can't tell us anything about how to put things together. It's fair enough to put some policy proposals as a contract, and frankly, everything Nigel said he would do, he's done, and he is more interested in the principle that we should be self-governing. And by so doing, self-governing is number one. I could take a step forward and back and say, well, the spiritual is more important than even, sovereignty. But by becoming a self-governing, clean break Brexit country, we can release significant 13 billion a year net. And then we've put forward other proposals of saving money on HS2, 100 billion, saving on half of the foreign aid budget, and it's totted up to nearly 200 billion pounds, which can then be invested in a whole number of areas. So on corporation tax, basically it's only about 3 billion or so anyway. Only 6% comes from those who have profits under 50,000 a year. Take them out of corporation tax. Take out inheritance tax. It's only 1% of the take. And why should people pay tax, on, grieving relatives, pay tax on the estate of someone who's worked and paid tax all their life? So most of the policies are just common sense. Cancel interest on tuition fees, crushing students, at the start of their lives, their adult lives, just, with punitive taxes way above the base rate, 6%-ish. The funny thing is about the Tory party is that they've been stealing Brexit Party proposals for the last few months because they're common sense and they connect with the elector. So people who say, oh no, the Brexit Party don't have any policies apart from Brexit. They do, but because we're not the well-oiled machine of the Tories or Labour, it's, as you say, a new party, but all of the policies are common sense.
But you're having gone through and actually read the contract with the people that Nigel Farage has put out, which is very professionally done. It's easy to read, but there is very, very few policy details in there.
But so is the Conservative Party.
There's nothing mentioned on terms of foreign policy.
That is true.
And there's a little bit mentioned on defence. And considering that Britain will, if Nigel and your party gets its way, Britain would be an independent nation. And so therefore, how would Britain then dictate its own foreign policy?
Because I think there's a fair comment on foreign policy. On defence, it's all headline stuff. And for me, it's direction of travel. So headline stuff is we pay our dues to NATO. We get out of the European defence nonsense. We get out of overly funding sort of social projects in the foreign aid budget. So there is a little bit of foreign policy there. But some of the flux that's going on in international affairs, I think is a little bit pompous to say, we will do this and we will do that, because, frankly, the Middle East is completely uncertain. The unemployment, the youth of the Middle East, which is the largest proportion. We don't know which direction it's going to go. I have my own personal views about it, but I think they have, I can't answer why, in their great wisdom, they didn't put in at least a paragraph on foreign policy.
And there's nothing really mentioned at all about Christians, about our Judeo-Christian heritage.
No. I've made up for that.
Yeah, you've more than made up for that, Tim. About the way that Christians are being persecuted around the world. And surely one of the main reasons why we have such a big foreign aid budget is that with a big foreign aid budget, it means that we can have influence over the countries. Now, particularly places where Christians are being persecuted, that aid money could be used as a negotiation to ensure that those governments actually protect Christians rather than actually persecute them. And yet there's no mention of these big issues. There's no mention really very much of the importance of the transatlantic alliance with the States. We know that Nigel Farage is very friendly with President Trump.
Apart from NATO.
Apart from NATO. So it's very light on kind of content and kind of policy, which makes it very difficult for people to make up their mind and look beyond the Brexit issue.
So I'll just say this, of course, policy wonks and great interviewers like yourself and inquisitors, they will love every detail and every line of a manifesto, but the general punter, the voter, and I consider myself now just a punter because I'm not a candidate, They want to know the direction of travel. They want to know, are these people honest? Are they pretending that they're going to be in government? We may hold the balance of power so we can influence direction of travel, but we're not going to be there implementing policy. So take a step back and say, well, does it make sense for us to, hobnob as though we're sort of, bestriding the world stage, or just get Brexit truly done? Put pressure on Boris to say, look, there are millions of people in this country who want to be British. Then, of course, we're going to haggle over the minutiae of policy, domestic and foreign. But I think it is fair to say most polls have said Brexit is the #1 issue. Put something in about the NHS, let's say opening up midwifery and nursing so that you don't have to have some long degree to get into it. Let's start plugging the gaps.
Tim, I'll give you an opportunity now to speak directly to our viewers about why they should vote for the Brexit Party.
Vote for the Brexit Party. Well, I'm not really a politician. You should really pray and decide, do you want to retain 1,000 years of our Judeo-Christian heritage, or do you want it to be swamped by an overtly self-professed godless Europe? Now, of course, when I say Europe, I mean the EU. It is godless. They've created a constitution which is godless, and I do not believe they respect our heritage. And I've been mocked for it, but I can tell you that's the root issue, and it's all about our identity going forwards as a nation. And I think we are a nation that was God-fearing, and in living memory, we talked about it as part of Christian civilization. Let's recover it.
Tim, I just want to thank you so much for joining me on this election special interview. And I just want to thank you for watching this programme. All I can say is we need to pray and we need to vote.